Patapon is a trilogy of video games for PlayStation Portable, developed by the company Pyramid and the now-defunct Japan studio. The gameplay is based on rhythm, action and strategy in real time, starting the adventure of the Patapon tribe in the search for it in the end of the earth. Critically acclaimed, it quickly became a classic on the PSP and a cult game, which we still enjoy this great game today. However, in the course of Patapon's development, decisions were made to remove or modify elements of the game either due to optimization issues, improvements, bugs or time constraints. That is why fans have found its prototype, which contains unused and deleted content that could no longer be released in the final version. Although this version is a demo and is not adapted to our language, it is a gem to see the changes of the elements that we were used to. For example, what would you think if I told you that there were going to be small UFOs flying over the hunting fields, or that there were going to be houses for our Patapons and to be able to create a visible town in Patapolis, or that the minigames would be completely different just like the aspects of the Patapons? That's right, small details that could change the first game in the saga, either for better or for worse. Without further ado, let's start with the unused content of Patapon. As the first unused material, we have the creatures that were going to interact with the player, such as the spider, whose behavior would be peaceful and at the moment of impact of the attacks, it would release catching fading away like fruits in the jungle. There is even a test mission in the game debug, where we can see them. The spider already had an idle and damage taken status animation, but for unknown reasons it couldn't be included in the final version. In the promotional images of the game, curiously the spider appeared in the Patapon tree. I guess by its nature it would be in the jungle and specific hunting missions, and maybe appear in the Patapon tree. The UFO would be another creature for hunting missions. Its behavior is not so clear because it is in an inert state and, therefore, it is not known what reaction it would have when seeing the Patapons, assuming that it is incomplete for a final version. Similarly, like the spider, the impact of the attacks would release catching and it would vanish when defeated. It is honestly one of the rarest and most fascinating materials to see in Patapon. Unfortunately, we can't see any more behavior from this little UFO at the moment. Lastly, we have the unused Patapons, which are 5 in total. They are NPCs that would interact directly with the player in Patapolis, and most likely they would be very different minigames from the ones we have in the final version. The miner is the most recognized deleted Patapon, because in the decoded prototype it already had its minigame very developed and could be played without so many problems. His name was Dokapon the Miner. The minigame was that we would have to go to a deposit to collect minerals. Going through a subway mining corridor, our goal was to remove soil and rocks to reach the minerals. Depending on the color of the mineral, its quality was higher. Therefore, after finishing the established path, we would return to Patapolis with the minerals obtained, as long as we had to complete the minigame correctly. The minigame had its own animation, music, textures and sound effects. The mechanics of the minigame were to follow the sound pattern depending on whether the obstacle is dirt, rock or mineral. At the beginning of the minigame, it includes the tutorial that explains it. Here is a demonstration. Interestingly, in one of the 2007 Patapon trailers, the minor minigame and some details appeared briefly. This trailer is rare to find. Because of that, it is a valuable video to know about the history of Patapon's development. The following Patapons no longer include minigames, but even so, they are still interesting. For example, Ramja the Woodcutter. He is one of the eliminated Patapons. We would interact with him in Patapolis. His minigame or function has not been developed, therefore, we will not know what its game mechanics would be like. The next Patapon was called Gate. By his appearance, he was a knight with a helmet and a pike, in which we could only see his dialogues in Patapolis. Next, we had a builder Patapon. His name was Capeta, and like the other Patapons, we can only see his dialogues in Patapolis. And lastly, we had a Patapon with the appearance of a musketeer, in which he has a sword, a hat with a feather, boots and a mustache. He had no name and does not appear in Patapolis, so it is impossible to interact with him in this version. The few times that this Patapon appeared, were in the final images of the demo of Patapon in its prototype version. Also, there is a trailer of Patapon where he appears. If you've noticed, some of the Patapon's dialogue speaks of gratitude for their release from captivity. This gives us hints that in Patapon, we would have to free the Patapons from the Zigatons in quests, to get the minigames in Patapolis. This mechanic was not completely removed, since we can save Patapons in some missions, but the Patapons are normal and do not directly add or benefit the gameplay. The picture of the Patapon logo would look a little different from the current one. This is the game selection background removed from the current version. There was no game description. The pyramid logo had animation. It was extracted from the prototype before the official release in Japan. Likewise, the old Patapon logo was developed in the introduction of the game. This was on the loading screen in this version, where the design was different, as was the font. In the introduction of the game, the fading animation of the Patapon oath would have particle effect instead of burning. The drums would have a gray color as a base. The colors of their symbols were different, sometimes being somewhat confusing to identify. The symbols of the drums used another font, for each one of them, being a notorious design change in the gameplay, although it maintains the base colors for each drum as in the current game, as well as some designs for the Japanese version, in which its color would be totally white. Do you remember the Fever combo worm? Well, it was the replacement for an old combo interface, in which there was only the number of combos done, instead of the Fever mode. As a curiosity, its limit is 99 combos. The loading screens changed their design and textures, but their texts remained similar. The pickup animation was spinning up. It was still in development, so it was changed to the current one. It even had various pickup sounds. At the end of each mission, the victory animation was going to last a little longer. The font would be the default font of the prototype, its color would be completely gold gradient, and its animation needed to be polished. Likewise, the font would be the same and its color red gradient. In the development of the game, it was thought to replay a failed mission without forcibly returning to Patapolis, but for unknown reasons this mechanic was not implemented. The design of the altar would have a different design from the current one, where its color would be black. The old texture of the modern tree interface had a pastel brown palette compared to the current one, which has a yellow palette, and in some versions of the game, the interface texts changed. The priestess Medon would have a different appearance. He would have a blue cape, long eyelashes, and a different cane. The fire from the Patapolis torches looked different from the current one, as did the Patapons at the ceremony, which were missing their respective hats. The hat of Pan the Patapon would have a completely different design from the current one, just as there were textures in the removed Patapons, including the developed minigames. In the map of the Patapon world, you could see that the font was going to do as the logo of the old game, as we can also see the obelisk of the beginning, a small house, in which would be in Patapolis, and in the inferred part a kind of trajectory line that would show us our progress of the game, where there are different colors for the type of progress, because there is red or blue color. In the current game, there are model sheets of a complete house and one in development. Because of this, there is a clear hint that there could have been more models of houses and use them in Patapolis due to the final images of the Patapon prototype being a mechanic that could not be added to the final game, but this will be discussed later in this video. The icons of the missions would have different textures, although several were kept in the final version. In the old mission headquarters, it took longer to render the Patapons' equipment, the font of their interface was under development and the design of the Patapons' altar was different from the current one. All the animals would have different colors, depending on the version of the game, like the Kachik, which would have a dark brown color. Or the Mochichi, which would have a strong red color. And the Pichik, where its color is a dark red. Patapon appearance was a little different, he had equipment obtainable in the game and the sword did not cause as much damage as in the final version. Also, the design of Don the Yumapon was changed to its final version, where the texture of the weapon was changed. The color of the rare pawns changed as the game was developed, first they went full white, then they added the color on the bottom and then they completed the colors. In the prototype, any class could have the normal helmets. Also the Dodonga boss had texture changes, with white colors including a blur on the bottom, as well as black borders on its legs. Also, the backgrounds of the missions changed their design, such as the ruins in the boss missions, the desert, the ravine and the final images of the prototype, and some backgrounds would have their animations. The appearance of the hats when the Patapons are defeated would have a separate design, because of this, they appear on the altar as another object. Minigames obtained in missions through helmets appeared on the altar, such as Pan the Patapon's hat and Dokapon the miner, but were removed from the altar in the final version. The appearance of the key objects of the songs would have a design similar to a vase, likewise it was used for class weapons, that depending on the type of the object, its color varies for identification, but in its development it was removed. The Patapon weapon icons on the altar were shaped like double-edged axes, this was changed to the class icon on the Mater tree. In the prototype and in the promotional images of the game, there would be a different shield than the ones in the final game, it could be an old texture of an advanced shield, or as well as a new unused shield. The textures of the horses and birds were changed during the development of the final version. In the prototype game, there were many helmets for the Patapon equipment, some were used for the inhabitants in Patapolis and others were discarded. Here we can see many spear designs, some of them were not in the prototype, but in concept art, some of those spears were used by the Zigatons. The rocks and minerals were a little different from each other, although their design was outdated compared to the other objects, so they had to be changed for better identification. Here we have an object in which we could say that it is an apple removed from the game, although it sounds strange, its description tells us that it is a cherry tree, therefore, the texture of the cherry tree was originally the hinoki, being this texture, replaced by the current ones. In this case, the leaf was an object removed in the development of Patapon, most likely it was obtained through the Yubobon tree, although the main function of the leaf is unknown. The old texture of cabbage with eyes looked like a rose, but it was changed to the current version. Here we have the old textures of the divine weapons, in which they do not have any color other than white. This would probably be the design of the map to unlock levels. In the prototype this object could be obtained by playing missions, although the texture does not appear on the altar can be obtained by different means, such as debug mode. Due to the scant information on this texture or object, its function cannot be known exactly, since its description tells us that they are miracles, although it may be the texture that was used at that time for said key objects, or perhaps it could be an important material in the creation of houses for the Patapons due to its appearance in the final images of the game. Therefore, if you have any information or correct me about this object, you can put it in the comments.
Pirorong. Hong. Pirorong. Ini-bili. 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 Gerak-gerak. 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 Ya! Toria! Sai! Toria! Sei! Tosan! Harapu! Harapu!
Yahoo! Grung! What the? Biom! Gra gra!
As we have seen before, the minigames would be completely different from the current ones. Unfortunately, we cannot know about the other minigames. The minigames would be obtained by releasing the Patapons in specific missions, as well as we could replay a mission if we failed. Due to the models and textures of the houses in the files and in promotional images of the game, we can suppose that we could create a village in Patapolis, building in phases the houses for the Patapons to inhabit. The Patapon originally appeared in Patapon 1, but due to unknown reasons, the idea had to be discarded, and later used in Patapon 2. In conceptual arts, both the Patapons and the Zigatons would have high rolling platforms, in which they would attack from above, similar to the Patapons, with the defect that they could be damaged in all possible ways. Due to their structure, it would possibly be slow, and therefore, it can be assumed that it was not feasible to develop this unit in the game, due to its limited mobility. There would also be hot air balloons or zeppelins, where units could attack from above without worrying about short-range units, more similar to the idea of the Patapon, which in the same way, could not be developed, possibly because of its mobility. Obviously this was not going to be in the game, because it would change the whole game design, although it is curious how it could be applied in the game. The shield of the Zigatons in the promotional images had a circular shape in the center, and they could use it in any class. There was also a hat removed that was used by the Zigatons of high rank. It is noteworthy that the rectangular body of the Zigatons is more noticeable as well as its strong red color. As a curious fact, Dodonga was used as decoration by the Zigatons. There would be 3 Zigaton generals. One of them can be seen in a promotional image for the PSP and PS4, while the others can only be seen in the Patapon 3 trailers. The community have given their respective names and have theorized about his stories. At the end of the prototype of the game through the modified debug, we could access the final images, where we can see the large number of changes in the development of the game, such as equipment, backgrounds, designs, among others, as well as the war instruments and structures. In promotional materials, there were anteater-like creatures, which could be seen interacting with the Patapons. We can also see in the image, small crabs near one of the Patapon heads, possibly as decoration in the illustrations. Here we have small white birds to decorate the environment. It was used in Patapon 2 as a selection in the options. There would be a bigger bird unlike the previous ones. It would probably be aggressive against the Patapons. In Patapon 1, we would have the bats, but for unknown reasons it was used until Patapon 2. In the illustrations there were porcupine-like creatures. Their interaction with the Patapons is unknown. Likewise, we do not know what interactions most of these animals would have due to their strange design, one of them being used for the zigatons. As last we have the bee. This creature is very special, because it was always with the Patapons. Although the bee could not be seen in its original form, it has been present in the Patapon flag, as a shadow of the history of the development of the game that accompanies the Patapons on their adventures, when they were only illustrations created by the artist Rolito, which would serve as inspiration to a designer Hiroyuki Kotani, and the sound designer named Kemiya Adachi. Together with the company Pyramid and Japan Studio, they would create the unique rhythmic trilogy, Patapon. We have seen that Patapon 1 is the game with the most material removed from the saga. So many, that they could even have been missing from this video, either to not extend it further, or because more deleted material within the game files has not yet been discovered. Thanks to the community, this video has been made, through contributions from users dedicated to modding, as well as the receipts of old videos of the game. When making this video, I had a bit of mixed feelings, due to the changes that could have happened, be it more content to the game like more variety of sounds, more atmosphere in the environments, or if we can be bold, new game mechanics. Although, the final version maintains the essence of the original concept, it still has this feeling, that it would have happened if the removed content made it to the final version. The perspective changes when playing Patapon again, and not only have I had this feeling, but also many users have commented their opinions about this topic, comparing the old minigames with the current ones. They even commented that they had waited for the remastering of the game. Ending the video with a bittersweet taste, despite the unused material, we must be optimistic. The vast majority of this material can be played in the prototype, limited, but this content is still enjoyed, and also know that this information is going to keep for the history of Patapon and as a curiosity of the fans, contributing my grain of sand to expand information about this great game. In the comments box will be the respective credits, as well as if you have any input, questions, or any recommendations regarding the subject of the video, you can comment. That said, thank you very much for having reached the end of this video, and see you in the next content. Goodbye.